All right. Hey, everyone. This is Jenna Peterson. I am the founder of Women Eat Well. My private practice, which I started in September of 2020, and tonight I'm here with Susan, and we are super excited to celebrate National Eating Disorders Awareness Week, or NEDA Week. And so the theme of NEDA Week this year is Who is at Your Table? So you can celebrate that many different ways, thinking about like who's sitting around your physical table or who's around your table as a supporter for you in your eating journey. But one thing I did want to share before we dive in and start talking more about Susan's story is just the mission of Women Eat Well and how it came about. So again, I said before I started it in September 2020, and really it was born from my passion for food and holistic wellness all throughout my life, originally starting with my parents and family's organic vegetable farm, but continuing through my studies at Iowa State and then also working at UNI. And so at UNI, I served as health promotion coordinator and also provided intuitive eating sessions, which is my main service through Women Eat Well. But unfortunately, that role ended. And so during that time, I was able to connect with Susan during Eating Disorders Awareness Week last year. And yeah, some more about intuitive eating, just real briefly, is this is the intuitive eating book. It was written by Evelyn Tribbley and Elise Resch. And that's the program that we mainly follow around here. So we might talk a little bit more about that tonight. And then also there's a brand new book by Evelyn Tribbley called Intuitive Eating for Every Day. And I'll put a link in the comments later if you're interested in learning more. But without further ado, I just would like to open it up to Susan to give us a brief 3 to 5 minute summary of, where you're living, family, work, and just life right now for you.
Well, thank you so much again for having me. I'm glad we had that connection and were able to meet back up this year. It's a very near and dear part of my heart. So I enjoy this week so we can do some more awareness. I live in Hudson, Iowa, not too far from Cedar Falls. I am a mom of 3. I have my older son, Talon, who is 22, and then I have a daughter, Rebecca, who is 19, and then my son, Tate, who will be 17 next month, and he just won state wrestling last week, so we're pretty excited about him. So he's doing well. Yeah. But yeah, I for 7 years, I was a youth minister, part-time youth minister. I left that position about 2 years ago and started working at the Northeast Iowa Food Bank, where I was a grant writer for about a year, and then took another position now where I am the community outreach manager, and I work with the volunteer department, and I oversee the grants and just get to talk to all sorts of people about food insecurity. So my whole life with food has kind of gone full circle now, where it was so hard for a while, and now I'm seeing, trying to help people get food that cannot. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. So
that's so cool. Yeah, and I forgot to mention before too, but it sounds like you were pretty involved in just like a church scene, and I've also been a member at Candido Church for the last 2 years, but beyond that, I do think incorporating that faith base is really critical for just this type of work that we do. So yeah, I just want to echo that.
Yeah, my faith is what I think helped me the most to get into recovery at the time. So my faith and how I got through all of the rough patches was my faith. So that's very, it's kind of my bedrock to my foundation and recovery. So faith has always been a big part of it. Working with kids when I was as a youth minister was awesome. It was fun to be able to kind of walk with them as they found and discovered themselves in their faith. And now, I feel like I do just as much ministry as I'm working to, feed people and to be there and to ensure that everyone, is getting served. So I kind of feel like it's all in one for me.
Yeah, it all blends together. It all makes a difference, and it all matters to your story.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like I said, it's just my foundation. So
that's so cool. Well, let's talk a little bit more about that. What has your experience been with an eating disorder?
Well, I think I suffered the most from an eating disorder from the age of 16 through about the age of 22.
Mm.
So it was a short-term part of my life, but it was very destructive. I was a 16-year-old that was in high school and had just had a breakup with a boyfriend, which, you know, a lot of 16-year-olds can understand.
Yeah.
And when I get stressed out, I just didn't eat very much. And things were kind of chaotic in my life at that time. And so having something I could control became kind of my thing. And food became something I could control. So it wasn't like I just woke up one day and was like, yeah, I think that not eating things should be kind of my thing. And I don't even think I had a name for it necessarily for a long time. It was just how I dealt with it. And I had people that, you know, as time went on, a few months went on and I lost weight and I got that, you know, you look great from a few people. And that was just kind of enough to just kind of start easing its way into my life a little bit more. So as I went through high school, I would say I went through periods of time where I had, you know, peaks and valleys. I would have times where I didn't think like it was really bothering me. I could get through life. I was eating, you know, those kind of things. When things would get stressful or chaotic and I just needed control, that's kind of when I would dive into it and kind of just dive for that control. And that was a lot of it for me. So it kind of went throughout my high school, you know, years, just my junior and senior year there. And then I think that one of the big things for me was going off to college. And many people talk about the freshman 15. And I was very worried about that. Like I did not want to do that. And
sure, right. Like everyone is worried about that.
Yeah. So I just kind of didn't eat. And I think it just was, again, I'm in a new setting. I'm making new friends. I got to figure out who I am. And I kind of reverted back and I think I lost like 15 pounds or so in between my freshman and sophomore year. During those times too, it wasn't so much that I was trying to be thin or trying to kind of go through that. I would have periods of time where it just seemed, if I was very depressed or very sad or very anxious, that this eating disorder kind of became my monster, but it would also kind of became my comforter. Like it helped me get control. It helped me feel better. So at first it kind of tricks you into thinking that it's doing so much for you, but it's just hurting you.
You brought up control so many times already. And it's like this double-edged sword of like, oh, I have to control something because my life is so chaotic. And it ends up being the food when the reason is not really about the food, right?
No. Yeah. And for me too, it also kind of became that negative tape recorder that, you know, so many of us have that all the time of you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not, you know, for me, I came from a home with two beautiful sisters and I kind of always felt that insecure, like I'm not as pretty as they are kind of thing. And they were both homecoming queens and just popular. And I kind of always just was kind of there, you know, I was the funny, my sisters would tell you, but you know, after a while you kind of you try to find your identity. And for me, it was maybe that maybe I wasn't, you know, a homecoming queen or any of that, but I was little. And so I kind of felt good about it that way. But,
that comparison.
I kind of compared myself a little too much. And then that negative tape recorder plays when you start to fail. And it kind of ends up being, you know, like you're not good enough. You don't do anything, you know, well enough. So then you end up just kind of being like you need to have that eating disorder to kind of help comfort you. So it tells you you're awful, but then it also kind of is like, but if you come over here and control your food and not eat and do this, then you're going to feel better.
To make things better somehow.
Yeah. And it just doesn't really.
Right. It ends up being this, this monster or whatever you said. Yeah.
as I went through college, again, I had my peaks and valleys. I wasn't always not eating. I wasn't always skinny. As my sophomore year, I kind of confided to my mom. I'm like, I think maybe I'm a little depressed and I'm just kind of sad. And so she sent me to our family doctor, which was the total right thing to do, and this was like, talk to him, maybe it's time for some medicine and that kind of stuff. And yeah, the doctor was just like, you just need to exercise, which, yeah.
Oh,
but
no.
it was like, just kind of poo-pooed it and was like, you're fine. So then in my head, I'm like, okay, I don't have a problem. I'm fine. I am fine. So in college, I was a social work major. So I did a lot of research papers, and one of my topics was always eating disorders. So I learned about it. I learned how to hide it. I learned how to tricks of the trade kind of thing. And I just kind of became an expert. And back in the day, when I was in my 20s, the Oprah was still on. And she had on a thing with Tracy Gold, who at the time was a sitcom from Growing Pains. And she just had come and gone through a big treatment for anorexia. And so they had talked a lot to her about it. And I remember her saying at one point that it was so painful for her to lay down. That's how she knew she was too far gone. And it was hard for her to lay on her back because everything, all her bones were sticking out. And it was hard for her.
Yeah.
Because everything hurt. And so I kind of made a mental note. And I'm like, well, if I ever get to that point, then I know I've gone too far.
Right.
And so I kind of was like riding right there. And then my senior year of college, my husband, but my fiance took a job and moved about 3 hours away to a really small town Iowa, up in northwest Iowa. And I was looking for a job and couldn't get a job up there. And I had some offers back in Ames where I was living at Iowa State. And so it was kind of a blow to my ego and a blow to, I was very upset. And so those last few months before our wedding, so we got married in August, and at the beginning of May, between May and August, I lost over 30 some pounds. And, wow. So at our wedding, I was under 100 pounds and was just very uncomfortable. And just nervous about the future and just not happy. And we moved, and things were not the best, but my husband tried and did awesome. He was always there. And then, we kind of decided that maybe I was just depressed and I needed to just get into counseling. And so I started to see a counselor, and she was very patient and very, just, it took a while to talk Susan into this thought maybe. And then, my husband and I had this great idea that since I really didn't have a job, and I was working part-time, and then I was working full-time at a job I really didn't know if I wanted to be at. And, we're kind of it's stressful in our house. I'm unhappy. So, of course, the best thing to do is have a baby, because that makes sense.
Well, that makes everything better. I don't know.
So I ended up kind of going to the doctor to try to, get on some prenatal vitamins and get my blood work checked, make sure I'm all good. And the doctor looked at me and she's like, "You're trying to get pregnant?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to get off the pill and start." And she's like, "Honey, you're like 25 pounds underweight. I don't think this is going to work." And I was just like,
"What? What do you mean?"
And by the grace of God, I was pregnant within a month. And from that point, so on February 12th, 1998, I found out I was pregnant, and that was my day. That was my God moment, where I had kind of this God hearing. I just heard his voice say, you know, if this is what we have to do to get a hold of you, this is what we have to do.
Mm.
And it was like from that moment on, my whole life took a total turn. And I talked to my counselor, and she wanted to put me in an outpatient treatment, because this is back in the day when they actually had that, and there were a few of them around.
Yeah.
So but in order to be in there, I had to be diagnosed as a eating disorder person, and so I had to go through a psychology, you know, meet with a psychiatrist to diagnose.
An evaluation kind of thing.
Yeah, and all of that. And I immediately went to the doctor, you know, when you're hitting the last part of your first trimester. And actually, I went a little earlier because she found out. I called, and I'm like, well, I just took a positive pregnancy test, and, you know, they'll want to see you right away. And the doctor I had there, Dr. Patricia Harrison, I just love her. She looked at me and she said, okay, well, if we got to get you through this first trimester, you need to be drinking as much water as you can. You need to start eating. She hooked me up with a nutritionist. She worked with my counselor to help me get diagnosed, or to help me get into the group. And from that point on, my chart was flagged. I could not see my own weight, and she weighed me backwards.
Yeah.
And from that point on, I mean, it was like 20 years before I saw my own weight for the first time. It was awful what I did. And
it's such a powerful thing to know that you can choose to not see your weight at the doctor.
I think every woman should choose to not. Nobody has to. You just have to.
Right.
You just stand on the scale backwards, and you tell the nurse, I don't want to know. That's all you
just
have to
tell
do.
them that it's your right. It's your choice. You don't have to know. Yes. Get rid of your scale. This is such a good thing.
Oh, please.
But so I just have a quick question. How many years was it from the time when you first started having these controlling food behaviors, and then to the time you got pregnant and started really seeking help? Like, how long do you think that was?
6 years.
6 years. Yeah. So
but a short amount of time to some people. You know, some people will do this for 20 years before they get help.
It's true.
So,
but I think it's still a significant amount of time, and so that's just important to note, like, as we walk into the next part of your story, because I think that might resonate for some of our listeners.
Yeah.
But it sounds like by the time you were pregnant and you were looking for help from all of your doctors and care team and psychiatrists and counselors, you were really motivated. Is that pretty accurate? You were like,
yeah, it wasn't about me at that point. It was, you know, it was about this baby, and it was about just, you know, and after having that feeling of God in my heart, it was like, okay, I'm supported, and I'm gonna get through this.
It's time to
and it was just
change.
Yeah. So when I was about 5 months pregnant, I got evaluated, and I thought, oh, by the time I'm gonna get evaluated, I'm probably not gonna. I don't need the group. I'm fine. I'm good.
I'll be okay. I don't need help.
That was a fluke. I'm good. I'm gaining weight.
It was a joke.
And the psychiatrist I had met through my job when I was working at a shelter, or a youth treatment facility up in Northwest Iowa, excuse me. And he, you know, I did the whole questionnaire. We had the meeting, and he's like, you kind of really thought you were just gonna skate through it, didn't you? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, no.
Read my mind.
No. Yeah, he goes, I'm gonna diagnose you with this, and you'll be able to go to the treatment. And so I started treatment when I was about 7 months pregnant with my son.
And what was that diagnosis? What was your diagnosis?
Eating disorder with anorexia.
Yeah. So it was anorexia. Yeah. So there are different types of eating disorders, and your story is really specific to that type. But yeah, just to acknowledge that and know that you can get help for no matter what kind you might be dealing with.
Yeah, and there's a lot of times where people dabble into, you know, you can have a binge eater that doesn't necessarily purge. And then you can have a binge eater that then goes through periods of anorexia. And then you have, you know, bulimics that can go through times of anorexia. And anorexics that do bulimic things, and I just did not like throwing up, so I was not into that.
Yeah.
To me, it was just easier not to eat it.
Right. And
So
and the purge can happen through like over exercise too. So that's there's so many different pieces. Yeah.
Yeah, there are. So I started that group when I was pregnant,
Yeah.
and my motivating through that is in the group I was one of about 6 women, and a couple of them were, and there's probably 3 or 4 of them were 16 or younger, and were there for not court ordered, but placed in there by a family member.
Yep.
And needing to be in there. It was either there or hospital.
Yep.
And that was kind of what was brought to my attention, was that if I, kind of didn't pass or didn't, finish the sessions, that they would maybe recommend me for inpatient, because I had such a bad tendency with it. So so I went and I did it, and there was a mom that was there that was about 40, and which seems so old, but no. And she was in there because her daughter had been hospitalized for severe bulimia. And they kind of had traced it back to in her treatment, she, kind of said, I see my mom do it. And so as part of the treatment for her daughter, it was for her to get help. And so she was to get help, and she did not finish the class. And I never knew what happened to her. She had very deep-rooted behaviors. And so that was kind of my motivator, was I'm going to get through this. I want to get into recovery and stay into recovery, because I don't want to do that.
Right. And
so that's kind of what it was. So yeah. Wow. And then my son Taylin was born in October, and I wasn't done with the class with my treatment until January. And so they gave me 1 week off to have the baby, and then they wanted me back. So so then my husband, while I was in my classes, my husband then went to a spouse and family group that met every other week. Awesome. And so he learned about what an eating disorder was, and he learned about the things I was learning about, and naming it and figuring it out, and all of that. So
how to support during that.
How to support, kind of things to look for, things to say, things to not say.
Right.
And
yes.
And he was such a trooper. And then after we had my son, he would drive with me up, and if he had his class, he would go and he could take my son, but otherwise he'd wait in the lobby for me, and I'd go through my treatment and stuff. So, and then I went to aftercare for a while, but that kind of set me on the right path to just try to keep going with recovery.
Wow. So. That's so cool. And so, just as you were in that time of recovery, what do you think are some of the things that your husband or maybe some other friends or family members did that really helped support you?
Didn't try to fix it. So many people will sit you down. I mean, that's the first thing I tell people when they were trying to, well, the best thing I can do is just sit down with that person and make them eat. And when I first got through treatment, about 6 years after treatment, I was in recovery and doing well. I started doing some speaking, and I was at this one school, and the guidance counselor goes, I know exactly how to handle people with eating disorders. In the middle of this talk that I'm giving, and I'm like, oh, you do?
Tell me more.
And she goes, yep. She goes, yep, they have to eat at my office, and they have to eat everything on their plate before they can leave. And I'm just like,
to do it.
No. I said, no, that's not really helpful. I go, because eating disorders are not about food. And she just,
you're right.
And I'm like, eating disorders,
absolutely right.
It's in the title, yes, but they're not about food. They're about self-image and how we see ourselves and control and
mental health
body shaming.
and
Yeah.
diet
And
culture and yes.
yeah, lots of that. So I said, yeah, it is, it's something that I think people think. So it's that not trying to fix it. Sitting down and making me eat a cupcake wasn't going to make my monster go
No.
away.
And that's what I love about intuitive eating is we get to this point where yes, you get to sit in this non-judgmental space where, as an intuitive eating counselor, I'm not going to sit down with you or make you eat food in front of me. But there's just this opportunity to learn what is a safe and safe environment, but then also how can I get to a place where eating some of these foods can be safe for me and can be a positive experience instead of a negative one. So yeah. It's so powerful that just the most important thing you can do in supporting someone with an eating disorder is not try to take that away and not try to change the way that they are, but just listen and support and help in the ways that they're interested in.
Yeah, and so many times I've had friends that I've talked about this as as an adult and talking with them, and it's hard for a lot of people to grasp, like, really, like, this is, I don't get it, like, why do you do it, why does it bother you, I have a hard time with people that talk a lot about diets, and I'm not a big dieter because I can't, because if I start dieting, and especially if I get competitive with somebody, I'm gonna beat you, and I'm gonna beat you down that path. Yeah. So I just can't. But I really struggle with temptation.
Yeah, like that's so important to recognize. I mean, like the diet talk that people have, even if it's really subtle, like, oh, I can't have that, it has too much sugar. It totally rubs the wrong way in terms of recovery from eating disorder as well as practicing intuitive eating. Yeah.
And my favorite thing is when people say, oh, I ate that, I am so bad.
You mean you're
really? You're bad because you had a cupcake? That doesn't make you bad. That makes you smart, because cupcakes are amazing. But it doesn't make you bad.
No.
And I've learned that sometimes, people, when they start just going off about diets, or I'm doing this kind of eating, and I'm eating clean, and I'm not touching that, and I'm low carb,
it's all diet.
Walk away. I'm like, well,
yeah.
I don't care how you slice it. I don't care if I'm just eating healthier.
We want to be eating in a way that helps us feel well, not just physically. And so, I always, I actually start my presentations by asking, like, what do you think is healthy eating? Because that's such a loaded term. It's like your definition of healthy eating is different than yours, is different than yours and yours and yours. And what does that even mean? Like, no, you're totally right. Food is good. There's no such thing as bad food. It's only a moral thing. It's not a moral thing to eat different foods. It only becomes a moral thing if you were to steal the food, or if you were to like hurt the chef, or like kill the farmer. I mean, like those are moral things, but food is not, and it's not meant to be, and that's not why it was given to us to eat and enjoy.
Yeah, and I mean, there are foods that are good for your body because they help your body work better, and they help your body, burn things, and it helps you be active. And I exercise a lot, so there are times if I eat a lot of cupcakes and not enough vegetables, I'm gonna feel it. Right. But I shouldn't spend the time then beating myself up because I ate all these cupcakes.
Yeah,
I think that's the rub for people, is that it's that cross between what people think they should do and then what they do, and then that in between part of I'm gonna
I like to think of that as kind of like a seesaw of like deprivation and guilt. So when you're depriving yourself, then your guilt is really low. But if your guilt is really high, it's because you didn't deprive yourself, where we can actually find a place in the middle that's not too extreme either way. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's just interesting the people that, you know, different things have different views,
Mhm.
and it can be cultural, it can be,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
your family, of how you
Yeah.
grew
Yep.
up,
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
that's one thing.
yeah, just like that idea of you use cupcakes a lot, but it could be any like
Yeah.
dessert, your sugary food that someone doesn't consider healthy. And I
Hmm.
call that play food. It's not
Yeah.
bad, it's not unhealthy, it's play food. Do you do play all day?
Hmm.
No,
No.
you work most of your day, but you do play some of your day. Same with like the whole week. You have your work week and then you have your weekend, but it's not
Hmm.
weekend all day kind of deal.
No.
So
Yeah.
there's a time and a place for play food, but there's also a time and a place for your average food, and that percentage of play food to more like
Yeah.
health, maybe nutritious, I don't know, food would be different for everyone. So your body will tell you what's best.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is to listen to your body and
Right.
listen to, one of the things we learned in treatment was how to do self-care, because
Mm.
we all sucked at it. And I mean, one of the counselors that was leading the group was like, you know, I want you to take a bath, and then after a bath I want you to put lotion on, and then I want you to put lotion on just your arm for a little while and think about what a good arm, like what does this arm
Mm.
do for me every day, you
Yes.
know.
I love
And
that
it,
exercise.
you know, and so once I kind of did that, I was like, okay. And then, you know, once, and having my son, and he was born and he was 8 pounds and healthy
Oh,
and
yeah.
wonderful, and it was kind of a very like, okay, I did that. I did that, you know, and if
Mm-hmm.
my body can do that and did that, I have to take care of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just becomes a little bit different when you look outside yourself
Oh, yeah.
and that kind of stuff.
And I do think that's one of the pieces of um, having eating concerns is there is a lot of focus on oneself and
Yeah.
like perfectionism and kind of an obsession with either the way you look or something about your life. And
Hmm.
so I think, yeah, it does take kind of that outward focus in order to start
Yeah.
making progress. Yeah.
And one thing too was for me was to look at it as what I put in my body doesn't define my body. You know,
Yeah.
if I eat food that's good, great. There's gonna be times I don't, and that's
Mm-hmm.
okay. And it's not, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's not the end of the world kind of thing. So yeah, that's kind of my thing, is I really think that looking at it and looking at how you feed yourself and how you take care of yourself, and you know, it all goes into our self image and our body image,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
helps us to have a
Mm-hmm.
better body image. And I think as women too, we have to really look at how we project that onto other women, onto our daughters, onto our nieces,
True.
you know, of how do we talk about
Yeah.
self body, you know, a good self body image if we are not
Yeah.
doing it. So I kind of like to always make sure that we talk about good
Mm-hmm.
body image, you know, especially with young girls, of finding a way to. One thing I tried really hard to do with my daughter was I tried not to talk about dieting too much.
Mm.
So,
Awesome.
you know, or at all. I tried really
Right?
hard not to ever talk
Yeah.
about it, because it just, what good is that? So yeah, so I
Mm.
just didn't.
You
So,
didn't see the value
but yeah.
in talking about that at all. And I think you're totally right. I
Mm-mm.
mean, one of the most powerful research behind just why dieting doesn't work is that 90 to 95% of diets fail. If we bought
Yeah.
anything else with that high of a failure rate, like we would not do it. We would never go in that
Yeah.
direction. Yet people do diets and it's the only product that will then turn around and point to you as the
And
problem, not it. And it's so deceptive. And
yeah.
so I fully agree not talking about or promoting dieting for
Hmm.
younger women and those who are looking up to us, because yeah, it's not a long lasting thing. It might last for a few
Hmm.
weeks, but it's not going to be forever.
No, and it's something too that I think it just goes to just acceptance of who we are. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I have a body shape that others don't have, you know,
Yeah.
and you know, you have the people that are naturally skinny and naturally little, and
Mm-hmm.
then you have, you know, people that maybe struggle a little bit more with it, but every body is different.
Yeah.
So then you have to look at your body and not compare it to the next person, because that person's body is just as different. So, you know, what diet would work for one person doesn't work for another. And what might be a, you know, like the fix all, like all I had to do was drink more water and then I was fine, you know, but that doesn't necessarily be it for all people.
Yeah.
And I have a dog that needs to leave my room, so hold on.
We'll just wait till you come back.
There we go.
Conversation. Okay,
just
sweet.
at me like, Mom, I want to
me.
leave.
Gotta love pets.
Oh yeah, they're fun.
But yeah, no, just like loving the size that we're in. And I mean, love is a really strong word, so is hate. So when we talk about like respecting our bodies, I think it's really important to come back to that idea of like body neutrality.
Yeah.
Like I can find, you know, the things that my body does for me and celebrate that. I can learn to accept these things that I maybe dislike about my body. Whereas, you know, loving, like, I don't know if I can ever love that specific thing or these flaws that I'm seeing. And it can be really hard for different people. So to just like honor that and respect the fact that, yeah, maybe you never will get to a point of loving your body, but you can still see growth within that and kind of learn that, oh, things are maybe not quite as black and white. We might find the gray within that. Yeah.
Oh, there's so much gray. Because, I mean, it's just, black and white, and trying to put, I also don't like jean sizes. Like, I love that some places now are just small, medium, large, extra large.
Right.
I'm like, I don't want to. I hate numbers wrapped around.
And the size doesn't matter. Like they're different between different brands. They change all the time. And that reminds me of the project that we did at UNI. And I know the Student Health Advisory Committee, a club that I sort of helped restart, is continuing it this year, but it's called Love the League You're In. And so you're hanging up jeans throughout the union, and this was something one of my old colleagues, Joan Thompson, had done before me, and it was just such a cool thing to hang up these jeans of different sizes and colors and everything to celebrate, like, oh, you can love the jeans, like the biological jeans that you're in.
And it's just, I wish more places would just do small, medium, large, or just give it a different name.
I don't know.
You know,
gotta think about that one some more.
I don't like the whole, all of that. Anyway.
Also wanting to ask you, what are a few different resources that you would recommend to those wanting to learn more about this topic, whether that's like a book or a magazine or a place you follow on Instagram?
Well, I have my own little blog on Facebook too, so you can follow that.
I
also think that for me, I like the whole National Eating Disorder Awareness, their whole stuff that they do.
NEDA.
That's good stuff.
Has so many great resources. I
kind of think that's like the place to go. There's people out there that talk about it and that are good sources, but I always worry too. Sometimes I've gotten into different groups on Facebook, and I've gotten into things and followed people on Instagram, and sometimes it just becomes either all about exercise and let's get your body into this shape, or it's all about kind of their struggles, and
like looking
so it's hard to be
for support, but in a digital space, and it's kind of tricky.
I think that reaching out to people that have already been through it is always good. I try to, in my blog, I try not to talk too much about my struggles or whatever. I like to put a little bit more humor in it, and I try to be a little bit more into the whole, we're all warriors. That's kind of my thing, is we got to be out there and be there for one another and lift each other up, and things can really suck from time to time, but it doesn't mean it's always going to. So I try to, be more uplifting and those kind of things. But and for me, I mean, the best resource that I always go to when I'm really struggling is the Bible,
Wow.
which some people were like, no thanks.
Yeah.
But that's where I go.
Mm-hmm.
I go to the Psalms. If anybody needs a good Bible chapter to read or book to read, the
Right.
Psalms
You'll find those laments of like, help me in my time of need. And I think that is so powerful because, I haven't struggled with an eating disorder myself, but I would say it was more along the lines of disordered eating, meaning dieting that kind of went in a south direction and could have potentially contributed to an eating disorder if it had continued long enough. But and so I think, like the Bible has helped so many different people.
Oh yeah,
so many different struggles over the course of thousands of years. So I can see why, just applying it to a variety of situations, it would also fit this situation.
And I think also getting a good group of friends that supports you. I've been blessed with some of the very best friends I could possibly have in this world that have always supported me through this. And I think that is the key to getting through just about anything. And I think that, you got to have these friends that will make you giggle and make you laugh when you don't want to.
Right.
And you also have these friends that are there and can just hold your hand when you cry and don't have to explain to them. So I think the biggest part for me is to always make sure that you have a group of people around you that support you. Our group is called My People, and they are my people. They are who I go to. So I think finding a group of people like that is going to help through many things, not just body image.
Oh yeah, just having that accountability to keep going on the right direction and to keep being honest about, yesterday was really hard and here's what I was dealing with, but I was able to overcome because of this. Or
And I think it's important because you get different perspectives and you get different people that see things differently. You might get ones that are, and I can see that a friend of mine is watching, and you might get the one that always is so positive, and she just makes you a more positive person because she can find the positive out of anything. So she's one of those that, I've learned a lot. I think that she's helped me to be more positive, and I think that's a lot there too. You got the one that I have one that will just crack a joke and make fun of me no matter what I do. And sometimes I get irritated, but man, I just love them. So
right.
They've all taught me not to take myself too seriously, and I think that's a lot of it.
I love that. Yeah. There's so much that we can overcome through humor.
We're really just not that all special by ourselves.
Gotta take things a little more lightly.
Yes. So.
Well, thank you so much for spending this time with me tonight. I know we're getting close to the end of our time, but I just thought I'd ask one last question, which is, what are 3 simple joys that help you these days when you have struggles with your eating?
Simple joys. I think when I'm struggling and really having trouble with it, I think the biggest thing I've learned is, again, it's that I'm not taking myself that serious. Sometimes we forget that how we see ourselves is not how the world sees ourselves. And so how I see myself and what I might be picking on and what I, think that is awful is somebody else's, what are you even talking about? Like, I don't even see that. And so I think for me, it's to take a step back and remind myself that we don't need to take it this serious. And for me, it's also, if I'm starting to struggle and I'm starting to really feel like out of control and needing to find my control and I'm grabbing at my eating disorder again, I have to look at why. what's going on in my world? Where do I need to take a step back?
Mm-hmm.
And do I need to talk to somebody about this? Do I need to just accept things? And that is helpful. I have found my own outlets for when I start to feel that. I work out a lot. That's kind of a good way to, I don't work out to fit into things. I work out. I tell my friends I work out so I don't kill people. So it's just, I work out just to relieve that stress and to get it all out. And that's always good. And it kind of just helps me to feel better about what I do. And my thing is, when I was first in recovery, one of the things that really I glopped onto was cleaning. When I feel very stressed, I clean my house. I clean. And it's funny now because my kids, they will come home, and if they walk in and they can smell bleach, they're like, oh gosh, what happened? What are you upset about, Mom?
Tell me what's happening.
So I do like to clean. It kind of is my stress reliever.
But
that kind of
you're right. Too. All of those are things that can help relieve stress. And
for me too, it's also another way I do it is just to open up to people. Sometimes, my husband and I have been through a lot together.
Yeah.
And there'll be times, and he's very good at just, okay, what do you need? What do you need? And sometimes it's just that I just have to say it out loud so I know how crazy it sounds. And then I feel better. It's that when you bottle it up and we have all these negative tape recorders going and you just keep it going in your head and you don't actually like talk it out or write it out or whatever, you don't see how big of a lie it really is. And it's easy to believe. And then when you say it, and I can say it to a friend or I can say it to my husband, and it's just like, what are you even talking about? That's
like a sounding board. And they can speak truth to you and say, oh, that's totally not true. I see you as this and this and this, and you're so much more than, whatever lie at the time your eating disorder is telling you or your thoughts are telling you. Yeah,
exactly. It's the lies that we choose to believe. And so having somebody that can poke holes in those lies for you are pretty good. It's pretty good.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, those are such good strategies and just, so many different pieces to like the puzzle of recovery or healing, I guess, in terms of how do you deal with an eating disorder. There's no one way and there's no one like path that people will go along in order to approach that. And all of these different pieces are like the support that help keep you going when that urge comes back. Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of it is just kind of knowing I've learned triggers. Sometimes something will come out of nowhere and blindside me. But for the most part, I think you learning your triggers and what gets you and kind of then heading it off kind of is helpful too. And just know that recovery is hard sometimes. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes I don't even think about my eating disorder or have those thoughts. But there are days it's right there and in my face. And there are times, you have to choose to be in recovery every day. It's not just something you can kind of gloss over.
I love that. I love that you mentioned that because I do think like one of the main things that sometimes stands between us and the help that we need is ourselves, and that's probably the biggest thing. It takes that willingness. It takes that acknowledgement of like, oh, I actually can't keep it all under control myself, nor should I need to. So I can choose to seek the help that can get me to a place where I can be healthy, where my physical body can be healthy so that I can, keep living this life for the people around me and just learn to live it with joy. So,
exactly.
Well, it's so good to reconnect with you.
Yes, it's so good. Good luck with this. I would say anybody that needs to should reach out to you and learn more about what you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I hope if someone sees this and is thinking like, I've never gotten help for that, that you would feel comfortable reaching out. You can find Women Eat Well on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. We don't do as much on Twitter, but definitely Facebook and Instagram. And my blog at womeneatwell.com. So Susan, you can definitely drop the link to your blog in the comments on this post.
Okay.
I can drop mine. I'll also drop that intuitive eating book that is coming out on March 16th in the comments. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to message me.
Yeah, if I has questions right now before we go, maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, I see one comment from Taylor who said, thank you for being so open and sharing your story. God is so good. That is 100% true. Yes. So any questions, feel free to comment now. Otherwise, you can message us later.
And I am putting this in as, I think this is kind of as it is hashtagged or whatever. So
awesome. Yeah, I will figure out the comment thing later. I don't know. All right. Well,
thank you
everyone
so much
for tuning in. Yes, thank you, Susan, for sharing.
Yes.
All right.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.